3, 2, 1, go!
After such a long time, the wait.
Oh, we waited?
finally
We
over
waited for Black Widow?
At
It's about 2
last,
years.
The film answered all of our lingering questions
Not
about
all.
Black Widow's origin.
Never answers
Of
all
course,
questions.
This being Marvel, the only way that you could truly get all of her story is if you were an eagle-eyed comic book nerd who had read a lot
Which
of Black
I
Widow
am not,
comics,
so
and
inform me,
luckily
please.
For you, that's exactly what we train our agents to do. Let's go.
Yep, I need to
If you're
get used to
anything
that.
like me, the one part of Nat's story that we were dying to know about was that
Budapest.
legendary Budapest story that she referenced in the Avengers while her and Clint
Finally.
were fighting off those alien invaders. While we didn't get the flashback scene that I specifically asked Kevin
yes,
Feige for,
that's
we got
true.
the next best thing. If you look really closely, you can make out how the whole thing went down. In the Budapest apartment, there are arrow markings on the wall that imply he and Nat fought there.
Yep,
We know that Clint
famous
got
fight.
the order to take her out, but made a different call. She ended up defecting, and in order to prove herself,
She needed
and
to take
Clint
out her
blew up
boss.
Drakov's building. This led to a massive battle through the streets of Budapest that apparently resembled a Chitauri army, at least to Nat, that is. The two then hid together in a vent where we could see that they spent their time playing tic-tac-toe, hangman, and becoming best friends. It would be so sweet if her little sister weren't trying to track him down to avenge her.
Yeah, poor Hawkeye.
In the original Avengers, Loki gives about as much of Natasha's backstory we would get for years.
That's
he made Clint spill all the
true.
beans about all of her greatest sins, or the red in her ledger. Among the
The
many horrible things that
daughter.
Natasha had done in her career for both S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Red Room, the worst seemed to have something to do with Drakov's daughter.
I
Now
had
we've learned
no
that Nat
idea
tried
he
to take
mentioned
out
her
both
frickin'
Drakov and
almost
his
10
daughter
years
as
ago.
collateral damage in order to defect. This failed and allowed Drakov to slink into the shadows. His daughter, meanwhile, went on to become the Taskmaster. That certainly is a lot of red in her
The most
ledger.
disappointing part of that whole movie.
There's one really quick line in Black Widow that references one more part of Marvel's Russian stories. Yelena mistakenly calls Alexei the Crimson Dynamo instead of Red Guardian. Crimson Dynamo was actually a villain in Marvel Comics. Whereas Red Guardian was the Russian Captain America, Crimson Dynamo was like the Russian Iron Man.
So they're
He
two
was
different
thrown into
characters.
a blender with the character Whiplash for Ivan Vanko in Iron Man 2. That being said, there were several Crimson Dynamos in the comics, so we could see one pop up in Armor Wars when Rhodey finally gets his own
Would
solo
make
series.
sense. Would make sense.
Yelena was a surprisingly fun character,
I
wasn't
love
she?
While the
trailers
Yelena.
certainly
I love
showed off
her.
her chops as an action star, they did not let us know that she would be cracking us up every other scene. Remember when Nat said beep beep in Age of Ultron? I always imagined the Widows to be just a little strange, like someone who hasn't been around people much and mumbles to themselves and stuff.
All
Just
I'm getting is Natasha
kinda
kick
weird,
the
but
Widow's
in a good
asses.
way. Her best running gag by far concerned
The
the
jacket.
first clothing item that she ever
The
purchased.
jacket. I love the
that
jacket.
had a ton of pockets. It turns out that this jacket was hiding in front of us the entire time.
Infinity
Natasha
War.
was actually wearing Yelena's jacket during Infinity War.
That's so
I hope she got it
awesome.
back.
That's so
In
awesome.
one of the cutest sequences that we see in the entire series, we see that Natasha had a secret love of James Bond movies. How big
Who
of a fan
doesn't?
was she? Well, she could quote Roger Moore's Moonraker line by line, so I'd say a pretty big fan. Moonraker
Natasha's a
wasn't
James
just
Bond
chosen to show
movie
Natasha's
fan.
hobbies, though. That movie ends with Bond fighting a giant floating base that looked a lot like Drakov's Red Room base.
That's
I'm
so
just glad that
Marvel.
she did not have Scarlet Witch's powers, or she would have made a small town live out a series of Bond films over and over, like in WandaVision.
That would be dope.
The opening sequence of Black Widow spent a lot of time showing just how deep Drakov's influence went. How did they pull this off so quickly? They used the old Forrest Gump tactic of inserting him next to real-life historical figures.
That's always
Instead
works.
of the likes of JFK and Nixon, Drakov was placed next to leaders like President Bill Clinton and President Vladimir Putin.
Oh,
What's
good old
kinda funny
Putin.
is that all of those historical figures are now canon in the MCU.
Really? How? When? How did I
Taskmaster
miss
might
that?
be one of the most intimidating villains we've seen since the Winter Soldier
It's
first showed off his knife trick against Cap.
disappointing,
While
so-
the comic
so
character is a villain
disappointing.
named Anthony Masters, the MCU version is revealed to be Antonia Drakov. While that was a pretty big change,
I wish
how
they pushed
Taskmaster
her more.
fought remained the same. Every single move
Her
Antonia
action
made
scenes
was a
were
reference to other
freaking
MCU fighters
amazing.
like Black Panther, Hawkeye, Captain America, or even Natasha herself.
It's like
What's
freaking
sad
seeing
is
the
I've
whole
probably
Avengers
seen that airport
just
fight
with
scene
one-
from Civil War more times than Antonia, and I cannot do any of those moves.
None of us can.
We all need friends like Rick Mason.
I hope Rick Mason
Natasha's
stays in
very
the
own
MCU.
independent
I love
contractor
him.
came through for her across the movie with any safe house or second-hand helicopter that he could find. It probably won't surprise you that Mason is another spy character in the comics.
I hope
known
he
as
stays.
the Agent. Seeing as
Oh,
he'll
shit.
pretty much work for anyone, it would not be surprising if Mason starts showing up all over the place like Jimmy Woo or Coulson.
He was
It's
good in
kind
the
of a
movie.
funny coincidence that the woman who ended up playing Nat's adoptive mother was none other than Rachel Weisz.
Why is
Not
it
only
funny
would she have been a top
coincidence?
contender to play Natasha Romanoff in the late 90s, but she's married to current Bond
Okay.
actor Daniel Craig.
Really?
According to her, at one point, both Black Widow and No Time to Die were scheduled to release the same weekend.
Way to go,
While
Daniel
they were having
Craig.
a summit meeting about it online, Craig was literally walking around behind them as Kevin Feige was discussing how to handle the Bond movie problem. Evidently, Weisz really wanted to say, well, he's right here, you can ask him.
That would have been so funny.
Black Widow's
I would love
mission
to watch
statement
that.
was to answer every single question about Nat's life that we've ever asked, and apparently some that we didn't. The movie ended with Mason acquiring the special Quinjet team Cap uses in
Yeah.
Infinity War to save
The
Wanda
Secret
and Vision
Avengers
before
Quinjet.
flying to both Avengers HQ and Wakanda. I didn't know that we were going to get the jet's origin story too, but now I'm really interested where it ended up, or what used Quinjet dealership Mason bought it off of.
Can I buy a Quinjet?
If there was something very familiar to you about that car chase scene with Taskmaster, that was no accident.
Yeah,
The
we've
sequence
seen it
was
before.
Clearly modeled after the legendary chase scene from one of the greatest action movies of all time, Terminator 2. Not
I'll
only
be
does it have
back.
similar action beats, but even the score references some of the best moments from the chase. If Taskmaster does come back for another adventure, hopefully she keeps the Terminator references coming. Someone has to, now that Bucky's no longer Marvel's resident Terminator, the Winter Soldier.
Yep. Isn't there more Winter Soldiers supposed
gotta
in the
come
comics?
clean. While Black Widow definitely lived up to the hype, there was one
Oh, yeah.
thing I was hoping for that did not come. A cameo by Clint Barton.
Yeah.
Well, a physical cameo, I mean.
Yeah,
Jeremy
me too,
Renner
buddy.
did
Me
have
too.
a brief vocal cameo talking to Nat through her earpiece during the Budapest mission.
We need confirmation Drakov's in the building.
While I would have
wanted
loved to
more.
see the entire Budapest story play out with both Nat
That
and
would have been
Clint,
so good.
We got a little taste of it, though I wouldn't mind if they showed it all during the Hawkeye Disney Plus show coming out later this year.
Oh, you
Just
genius!
saying, Disney, there's still time.
You genius! Oh, wasn't a surprise
Seemed
Black
weird
Widow
to you that
appearance at
Black
Hawkeye. That
Widow
would be
made an
amazing.
abrupt costume change to a white supersuit during Alexi's breakout.
That supersuit
It's because it was a
is
reference
amazing.
to one of the film's favorite Black Widow comic runs. In the series Black Widow
I
Deadly
know that
Origin,
cover.
Natasha is seen wearing the now iconic white uniform
That
as snow
white
camouflage. Though
uniform
it definitely came in
is
handy
amazing.
during that story. It may have been snowy where Alexei was locked up, but they didn't do any covert ops in the snow. I'm not sure the bright white suit really did her any favors fighting in a prison, but hey, I'm not the super spy Avenger.
No, so don't
One
judge.
of the best scenes in the film was when Alexei was arm wrestling literally everyone in prison while telling
And
tall tales
boom.
about his time as the Soviet superhero, the Red Guardian.
Is
While one
here-
prisoner was not
Yep.
very impressed with his stories,
I've seen this
the
on Instagram.
massive prisoner known as the Great Bear took issue with the timeline of Alexei's story about taking on the still frozen Captain America. Well, in the comics, the Great Bear was
Is the
another
Great
Russian
Bear.
superhero who actually
Ursa.
resembled the Big Bear. I would say that there's still time for him to become a hero like his counterpart.
Supposedly,
but I don't
he's
think
the
that arm
first
of his is
X-Men
going to be
mutant.
fighting anyone ever again.
Oh, the arm. That looks.
If Alexei's stories weren't enough to keep the other prisoners entertained, his vast collection of tattoos probably do. His entire body
Why?
is covered in Soviet propaganda, ideology, and references to his superhero
He's
past.
so
his
giant.
fists have Karl and Marx tattooed on them. What I find interesting is how
What?
reminiscent the tats are to another Marvel character, Ivan Vanko. Is it possible that Ivan and Alexei were tatted up by the same prison artist? According to my headcanon, they were.
That would be funny.
While discussing the experiments done upon the widows, Melina dropped a line that should be very interesting to Marvel fans
What?
eager to hear anything that hints at the X-Men. She stated directly that girls were passed through the program if they had some sort of genetic potential. This is very reminiscent of the
okay.
language Hydra used to describe Wanda Maximoff when they were experimenting on her. Could this line
Maybe
be
a
another
little
brick Marvel
tease?
is laying for the
Maybe a
foundation
little
of the mutants?
breadcrumb
I
for the
certainly
X-Men?
hope so. That mind-controlled super soldier stick is awfully close to the Weapon X program.
That's true. Come on, Hugh Jackman, pick up the claws again.
But that doesn't mean that there is not a lot of untapped potential for the character. In the comics, she was a super spy by the name of Iron Maiden, who always lived in the shadow of Black Widow's greatness. This led to them clashing on more than one occasion. Melina's Iron Maiden mask is shown in her weapons room for a brief second, hinting that more action may be coming in her future. Something tells me we will see her put that mask on in a movie or a TV show sometime soon.
Okay. That's cool. That's a cool
Natasha's
Easter.
fake family completing their mission in America.
This intro is one of the best intros.
North Institute.
The best Marvel intro
the
ever.
Hydra base where they experimented on Bucky to master the tech used to control his mind. This institute was based on real experiments the CIA conducted on mind control. Project MK Ultra.
Oh yeah, I've heard
Chances are that
stories.
we'll see the mind control room the institute patented again at some point.
I've
in the
heard
MCU.
stories about
It's
that.
worked pretty well
It's
for Hydra and the
insane.
Red Room, so who knows who will be using it next.
Freaking
It seems
Hydra and
right
the
that
Red
Black
Room.
Widow's origin story would feature all of Natasha's greatest hits since 2010. She used her standard interrogation tactic that worked on Loki, where she puts on a sad face and makes the villain monologue out his plan without realizing it. She even ended her interrogation of Drakov with the same "thank you for your cooperation" line. Not only that,
That's
but in the
awesome.
same scene, she used
The
the cool
mask.
Mission Impossible face mask she used in Winter Soldier.
I want that.
Most
I
importantly,
want that
there's
face
the
mask.
infamous Black Widow pose that Yelena makes fun of her for before trying it out herself. I mean, it is a pretty cool pose. If you loved Black Widow and all you want is more, well, you are in luck. The movie is heavily based on the story Black Widow, Deadly Origins.
Oh, really?
This is the story
Okay,
of how
that's
Romanoff
cool.
became the legendary Black Widow. It goes through her childhood and
I need
sends
to
her
buy
on
that
an
comic book
adventure that
set.
sees her past and present colliding. The easiest way
Wolverine
to get more
was
Marvel
involved
action is
with
to
a lot.
go right to the source.
Wolverine's involved in a lot of
Alexei
past origin
really
stories,
hates Captain
as far as I
America.
know.
The only thing he hates more than his Western super soldier competition is that he never got a chance to fight him.
And
This
he
in
will
and
never.
of itself is a reference to the comics. The Red Guardian is often depicted as a Captain America villain. The two have fought many times in the comics.
They look very
just how
similar.
Alexei always wanted. Frankly, I think the MCU version got off easy. We didn't get to see him in his prime, but it's pretty clear that Steve would have obliterated him. I don't know if Alexei would have ever gotten over it.
Steve would have kicked his
There
ass
was something very
twice
familiar
on
about the opening
Sundays.
sequence of Black Widow. That's because Nat was apparently living out the plot line of one of my favorite shows of all time, The Americans.
No
Just like
clue
with
what that
Nat's
is.
childhood, the famous FX series dealt with a sleeper agent family that posed as Americans while spying for the KGB. Both were
Okay.
based on real-life stories of sleeper agents that lived in the US. So if the opening sequence really spoke to you, try The Americans out, or look up stories of the real-life spy families who
That
lived
opening
out this
sequence
Avenger's life.
freaking.
The end credits
Did a lot
sequence
of
for
things.
Black Widow revealed that Yelena was now working for a shadowy figure played by none other than Julia Louise-Dreyfus.
Our
Thanks to
evil
the
Nick
Falcon and the
Fury.
Winter Soldier, we know that she's actually Contessa Valentina Allegra de la Fontaine.
Say
sometimes
that
known
5
as
times
Madame
fast.
Hydra. She has also recruited John Walker to be her U.S. agent for purposes that we don't know yet.
Captain
Could
America?
she be forming her own Dark Avengers?
Yep.
Well, I'm pretty sure we're gonna find out when Yelena goes after Clint and Hawkeye later this year.
Dies. I have a gut feeling she's
Despite
gonna
the
kill
fact
him.
that we meet Natasha's
I have a
fake
feeling
parents in
he's
Black
gonna die.
Widow, there's very little we or Nat ever learn about them. The film reveals that her mother was actually taken out and buried in an unmarked grave by Drakov. Nat doesn't learn about her father until years later when the Red Skull informs her that she is the daughter of Ivan. While this is
Ivan.
most likely a reference to Ivan Petrovich from Black Widow's origin story, some MCU fans think it may be referring to Iron Man 2's Ivan Vanko instead.
No.
Frankly, I just don't see the family resemblance.
That would
Obviously,
be...
there is one Black Widow mystery that has been driving
this
Marvel fans to
dude-
think daughter of Ivan. Other was actually taken out and buried in an
Isn't
unmarked grave
this
by
dude
Drakov.
from the
Nat doesn't learn about
X-Men?
her father until years later when the Red Skull
The
informs her
one
that
that's
she is the daughter of Ivan.
Wolverine
While this
interacts
is
with in
most likely a
X-Men
reference
2.
to Ivan Petrovich
Isn't this
from
that
Black
dude?
Widow's origin story,
Hey, Tim
some
Man.
MCU fans think it may be referring to Iron Man 2's Ivan Vanko instead.
Maybe.
Frankly, I just
Probably
don't
I'm wrong.
see the family resemblance. Obviously, there is one Black Widow mystery that has been driving Marvel fans wild more than any other. When did Black Widow dye her hair blonde? I know. Thankfully, Marvel decided to answer the question by showing Nat with a box of hair dye at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah,
By the film's
I didn't
end,
even...
she has the look she sports throughout Infinity War. Now, if they'll only answer my questions about when she got her hair straightened before Winter Soldier. I mean, the people need answers, Marvel.
I like this dude.
It's...
I like this dude. This is good. There's actually some stuff I didn't even freaking connect myself. That's why these videos are amazing.